Hi, I am Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government. And I have with me today the head of our current Tampa City Council.
Yes, sir.
I'm so pleased to have you.
Thank you for having me,
Louis
Bill.
Viera.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We've not been together before, so I don't really know a lot about you.
Sure.
So let's start out with a little bit. You were born at an early age.
Yes, sir. I'm originally from the Temple Terrace area. I was raised in Temple Terrace. I've lived here pretty much all my life. My mother and my father passed on about 8 years ago, but they're originally from Cuba. They came here in 1960 as Cuban exiles or refugees.
Right after.
Oh, yeah. Castro.
They've been here early.
Oh, yeah. You have Castro taking over in, I guess it would be in New Year's Eve, 1959. And they immediately got out, and my mother would come to Miami, Florida. My father would come to Tampa, Florida, and then they would meet in Puerto Rico, and then I would grow up in the Temple Terrace area, and I presently live right now with my son in New Tampa in the Hunters Green community.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
So you've been here a long time.
Oh, yeah. I've been here. I'm 41 years old, and I've been here for almost 41 years. So
wow.
I'm almost as native as you can get.
Well, City Council is, quote unquote, not a full-time job.
Yes, precisely.
Anybody who thinks it's not shouldn't ever run.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very busy thing to be a part of it.
Very much so.
What is your background?
Yes, well, I'm an attorney. I'm a member of the Florida Bar, and I've been an attorney.
We'll forgive them that, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. You know, attorney and politician, the two most popular vocations.
There you go.
But I've been an attorney for 16 years, and I practice in civil litigation. I work about 20, 25 hours a week as an attorney. You know, both city council is a very burdensome job. It's not just the hearings that you do. For example, I serve on the MPO and on different other boards and whatnot. It's not just the time that you put on those boards. It's also the community work that you do. Like this evening, for example, I have a community meeting. You know, this morning my day began at 7:30 with a breakfast for Medal of Honor recipients. It's if you're going to take the job seriously and be involved in the community, it's going to take a lot of time.
Well, you can't even go to dinner without somebody walking up. I bet it's happened the last week. Somebody walked up to you and said, you know, I don't want to bother you, but there's that huge but.
Yep.
Almost with the plumber's crack. It's a big butt.
Exactly. And it's funny you say.
And then they jump on you with it.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny you say that because I remember being younger and I'd see people like Congressman Jim Davis and others at dinner. I go, oh, I'm a big fan. And you stop. And I'm probably one of 10. And he's just trying to enjoy dinner with his family. You know.
And the food's getting cold.
Exactly.
Everybody else is being ignored.
Yeah. But that's part of being a public servant. And I've been in there for about 3 years and I've enjoyed it a lot. So it's been a really good endeavor.
What made you decide to do this?
That's a good question.
You had a good practice. You're with a good firm.
Yeah.
What firm are you with?
I was at Ogden Sullivan when I was elected. I'm now with a firm named Banker Lopez as of counsel, which is being part-time, so to speak. You know, I had a very good legal career. I still apparently do. But I've always just wanted to be in public service and to give back. I've always been that kind of person that I have a heart for a lot of issues, and there were a lot of issues that I wanted to bring out into the forefront to talk about. I have a great passion for things like veterans, for example, and making sure that our veterans are respected.
Boy, I share that with you.
Oh, I know you do. Things like our first responders, our police officers, our EMS, our firefighters, things like making sure that all of our neighborhoods are represented, things like disabilities. And these are issues that maybe not veterans, but all the other ones that you deal a lot with in local government. And I thought it was a way where I can give back and also use my position as a platform, the issues I care a lot about.
You mentioned disabilities.
Yes.
Is there some reason why, or is there some dedication to that cause?
Yes, I have an oldest brother, Juan. I have two brothers, Tony, who's also an attorney, and then my oldest brother, Juan. Juan is 48 years old and is developmentally disabled. Juan has the mental capacity of probably a 3 or 4 year old. So growing up with Juan, very, very low, moderate to low functioning, I'd say, probably towards the lower end. But you know, growing up with Juan, has really given me a different view on life. It's not just for the things that parents of children with special needs have to go through, but the different issues involving social tolerance, the shaming that a lot of parents feel when they have a child with the special needs, whether it's autism, Down syndrome, developmental disability, whatever it may be, and then the public policy hurdles that they have to go through, whether it's issues like health insurance, whether it's issues like making sure that their child's going to have a job and something to do, affordable housing, civil rights, issues like that I feel very passionate about.
Yeah, we have a very good friend who he and his wife have a child that is developmentally disabled and lives in a home, but they take care of them. They pay for everything.
Yes, exactly.
And their greatest fear is what happens when we're gone.
Yes, exactly. And you know, my oldest brother Juan lives in a group home half the week named New Horizons Group Home over in Brandon. It's over there off Parsons. Very nice group home. My late father actually helped build it.
Oh,
and he served, he served on the board for many, many years. He was a contractor. And it's a good group home that was born out of the First Baptist Church of Brandon. A lot of parents who had a special education ministry just got together there and said, let's get together, and with the help of local government money and the help of God Almighty, they were able to do that. It's a very Capra-esque endeavor, so we're always proud of that.
You know, I'm kind of interested, every time I talk with somebody holding political office, there's some ox that they want to gore.
Yeah.
It's their passion, it's their thing, like Charlie with his pipes.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk to Charlie and the subject's going to pipes sooner or later.
Yeah.
What is your passion?
That's a good question. A couple of things. When it comes to local government, I think it's our neighborhoods, and that's a very all-encompassing issue. The issue that I ran on in 2016 was the idea that we've put a lot of emphasis on downtown Tampa, as we should. I strongly support downtown development. I don't think that any city in the 21st century that wants to be a first-tier city that doesn't have a residential, thriving, robust downtown is going to be left behind. But my message is, we've done that. Now let's take a look at our neighborhoods. Let's take a look at East Tampa. Let's take a look at Bush Boulevard neighborhoods. Let's take a look at New Tampa and Forest Hills, our friends in West Tampa, our friends in Hyde Park, et cetera, et cetera. Let's take a look at our neighborhoods. Let's invest in our roads. Let's invest in our parks and recreation, et cetera. Let's talk about code enforcement and issues like that, because that's where the heart of the city is, in our neighborhoods.
You know, one of the things you just mentioned, I live in Sun City Center, which is outside town, obviously.
Yeah.
But I keep preaching to my neighbors and my friends that people don't fly into Sun City Center.
Yeah.
They fly, if you say, where are you going? I'm going to Tampa.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you may be to Brandon or one of these others, but Tampa is where you're going.
Yes.
And if we don't have a healthy downtown, it's very, very important. But we also have to have a Tampa that's responsive not only to their neighborhoods, but to the whole suburban area.
Oh, yes, exactly. And that encompasses a lot of my district. My district has a lot of neighborhoods that I always feel, that, and they feel that they've always been neglected and left behind whenever it comes to things like the city budget. For example, you take a look at New Tampa, an area that has just grown remarkably. When I was a kid, I went to New Tampa for the first time in the 8th grade to go to a friend's birthday party. And I remember driving down Bruce B. Downs, and there's nothing out there at all. And we went into Hunter's Green, and I'm like, where in the world am I? You know. But if you look at that in 1990, when I went to my good friend Peter Austin's birthday party, and I still know Peter, it's funny, 33647 had about 7 or 8, 9, 10,000 people out there. You fast forward about 10 years, it goes up to about 25 or 30,000. Today, it's between 50, 55, and 60,000 individuals live in the 33647 area, and yet we continue to build out there in the New Tampa area, but yet we don't have the proper infrastructure to back up that population. It's like local government's taking the money out of New Tampa, but yet they don't spend it in these areas. The same is true for Forest Hills. The same is true for all of our neighborhoods, and that's one of the big things that I ran on.
I'll be honest with you, you're touching hot buttons all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Because out where I live, they've built over 10,000 new homes, and not one street to take the traffic over to 75.
Exactly,
This morning, Big Bend Road was blocked up from one car. One car messed it up. and they had like a 2-hour wait to get over there.
Yep, and you deal a lot with that in East County. In New Tampa, it's a very acute issue. Maybe about 2 years ago, there was a controversial development in K-Bar Ranch, which is a big developing community in New Tampa, where they were going to be putting about 700-800 new homes in K-Bar Ranch. I opposed that. I wound up being, I think it was the only vote on city council on it. And there were a lot of different issues with that. It wasn't a black and white issue. There was a lot of gray there, and that's ultimately why it passed. But my position was, I always say the same line, which is New Tampa is like somebody with a size 38 waist and size 37 pants, and every day we're eating at McDonald's. And that's a fact. So, and my view was, let's go to Weight Watchers. Let's go to Weight Watchers, and let's stop growing this, because we're going to continue to have crises out there because of that.
Well, with the amount of developer money out there.
Oh, yeah.
And let's face it, political campaigns run on money.
Sure.
And anybody that tells me, well, I'm not influenced by the money I get in my campaign, I'm going to look at very jaundicely.
Sure.
Unless they're putting it into a blind trust, we don't get to see.
And some politicians, I think, do that. But money certainly does have a role to play in terms of getting your message out there and projecting strength and all that. I was very fortunate that when I first ran as an attorney, I had the support of a lot of attorneys in my profession who really don't have any city business. It was just, thank goodness, people that, very much so believed in me, I'd like to think, which is good. But money in politics is certainly something that a lot of people have tried to fix. Going back to Theodore Roosevelt in 1912, you go back to things like McCain-Feingold,
right.
The late Senator John McCain, Russ Feingold, trying to get more public financing in campaigns. I hope we get there.
But the money has overcome good sense.
Unfortunately.
And it's really tough.
Yeah.
And it's tough on a politician.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because there are so many of these things out there. And the other excuse, obviously, is, well, we really can't control that today because the commission passed it 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
The zoning was...
Yeah.
And so we really...
Yeah, and that's actually what happens in a lot of places like K-Bar Ranch, which is it's zoned for a particular use, and if the glove fits, it's going to fit. You know what I mean? And that's certainly, so that's why you have to have more of a long-term strategy whenever it comes to these zoning issues. But but in my district, there's a lot of different issues. One of them is the area that we're in. We're here in the University Mall. One of the great passions that I have is moving it forward whenever it comes to the USF area.
That.
Yeah, that's
this
a big
is
deal.
A jewel. This mall has the potential of doing so much. I mean, with the covered parking and things that other malls don't have.
Yeah, true.
And it just seems to me that I guess there is a new group in here that's trying to do something with it. A gentleman
by the name of Chris Bowen is the developer who is taking this mall and trying to move it more so towards different uses with things like research, et cetera. So there are changes coming to this mall, but you've also got to look at the whole area off of Fowler and the USF area. I mean, you take a look at the USF area and the great dynamic institutions that we have here, not just the University Mall. You've got the University of South Florida, you've got Shriners, you've got Moffitt, you've got Florida Hospital, you've got the VA.
Yeah, James A. Haley is, under Joe Battle, who is a saint in my mind, has gone so far.
Yeah.
The lady that was in charge before him, no.
Yeah.
But this guy, just everything for the vets.
Yeah.
And it's really been a great thing for us.
And you should know, obviously, as a veteran. But there's so many institutions here in the USF area, and I think there exists the potential here to really see what I call redevelopment and reinvestment of this area. And I always draw a distinction between negative redevelopment and positive reinvestment. Redevelopment would take an area like this that has great potential, and you take the human capital and you move it out of the area, right? You put infrastructure first and you put people second. I think reinvestment invests in the infrastructure, you invest in transportation, you invest in the neighborhoods, and you invest in the people that live here, and you build around the folks that live here.
That's an interesting thought. I don't think I've ever thought of it in that way.
Yeah, it's always, because I mean, we all have
I've always think of knock it down, rebuild.
Exactly.
But where does everybody go when you knock it down?
Exactly. And if we care about an area, we got to care about the people that are here, the people represented here, or moms and dads, raising families, students with aspirations, young people with aspirations. That's what the USF area is all about.
Yeah, I was just looking at the situation with the graveyard, the Zion graveyard.
Sure.
And I'm thinking to myself, and honestly, folks, just from my standpoint, I was going to be dumped in the bay. That was my whole plan. Now I'm going to go down to the Veterans Cemetery in Sarasota, where they'll put me in an urn and keep me on a shelf somewhere.
Sure.
But honestly, I look at this, and I don't know enough about it yet.
Yes.
But if those graves are under housing, do we throw the people out on the street or have to find someplace, tear it down? I mean, to me, there's got to be some way to say, hey, this is revered ground.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And yet still let the people live where they are.
Yeah, you know, that's a very difficult issue. I know Tampa Housing Authority has been holding a lot of different community meetings. You know, we're seeing that in the city of Tampa. Our friend Paul Guzzo, who does such a great job with the Tampa Bay Times, has reported on Mount Zion and the issues involving there. You have mostly African Americans who lived in the Jim Crow era, and you know, it seems as if the disrespect they got in life is matched by the disrespect they got in death. You read recently about what happens with over at King High School. It appears, and again, I note my qualification, it appears that under potentially the gymnasium, I believe it was, I read, that there's a cemetery there.
Right.
And then on a different level, you had, I believe what's called Memorial Cemetery over near College Hill, that Mr. Guzzo also did an article on, which is a cemetery filled with veterans over in the East Tampa area in College Hill, that has also gone in disrepair. It not been built over, thank God, but that area, there was recently a city cleanup effort. I went out there with my colleague, Councilman Orlando Goods, who you recently interviewed. Orlando's a nice gentleman. We went out there with Mr. John Bennett, Chief John Bennett, I should say, the mayor's chief of staff, and with a lot of different community groups out there, and we helped do a cleanup of that area. Part of it, you would be interested in this, there was actually a memorial there done by the Red Cross for African American veterans who were killed in action in World War I.
Wow.
You know, yeah, and we did a little ceremony where we had a couple of young women who actually do the honor guards for fallen soldiers, and they did something there for the fallen soldiers, and we put American flags, you know, next to their graves, because those men are American heroes, and we wanted to honor them. Yeah, you're darn right.
You know, we all bleed red. I don't care what color your skin is. Sure. It all bleeds red.
Sure, yeah. And I thought it was poignant, though, that these were individuals who died for their country in a time when their reception here was less than stellar, and I'm being very diplomatic, and I think that adds something to it. Like, for example, just this morning I was at the Medal of Honor convention, and I happened to meet a gentleman, his name escapes me now, but he was a Medal of Honor recipient from New Mexico. He was a Japanese American who was part of the 442nd Regiment, the regiment of
very
Japanese.
Distinguished.
Yeah, go for broke. And these were Japanese Americans who served in World War II, in a time when our country didn't trust them, and they almost received 10,000 Purple Hearts for about 10,000 people there. So, you know, poignant stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting. What do you see for the city of Tampa? What are the challenges right now that you think the city is facing short-term and long-term?
Certainly. You know, I think the short-term and the long-term unite with some of our economic projections. We're still looking off at some of that debt repayment that we had to deal with a couple of years ago. We've dodged a couple of bullets as a city whenever it comes to some of our revenue challenges and some of the things that Florida voters voted on in 2018. With regards to additional exemption that would have saved this or cost the city about $4 million, I believe the number was, much higher obviously for the county. I think that the big issue we got to deal with is that we have what appears to be a very good economy right now, but that's not going to last forever. And we will have a recession. I'm not an economist, but within 1 to 3 years, things are going to slow down. And when that happens, the city's going to have different changes whenever it comes to things like spending, revenue, et cetera. We need to have, as the mayor has recently done in her budget, an increase in the reserves for the city of Tampa, so when that strikes, so when the economy strikes, we can have the proper fiscal safety net for our city, especially whenever it comes to the number one issue that involves the city, which is public safety. We have so many different challenges here in the city. I represent the North Tampa area that includes Bush Boulevard. Fire Station 13 over near for the Bush Boulevard and Forest Hills area is one of the is one of the busiest fire stations, not just in the city, but in the state. It's an overwhelmed fire station. So we have to balance out issues of revenue and not needs, or strike that, not wants, but needs. I tell people the things that I'm talking about when it comes to public safety, that's a need.
Well, you know, with Jane Castor now as mayor, somebody that should know about public safety.
Sure, yeah.
This lady knows it.
Oh yeah, yeah. She wore the uniform for over 30 years and served as our police chief and as a police officer. And you know, that's one of the things that I greatly admire of hers is her service in uniform with Tampa Police Department. And she certainly feels that in her heart and in her bones, so to speak.
She has the most wonderful sense of humor.
Sure, yeah.
One day we were talking, and she said you took her son down to UT and was showing him the cases with all the trophies and things. And she was filling up with pride, she said, because you know she's prominent there.
Sure.
And the young man walked up to her and said, "Mom, seems to me you're an awful ball hog, weren't you?"
That's a way of looking at it, you know. But she's.
But it was just. I thought it was just cute. She was able to tell that on herself.
Oh yeah, no. She has a very witty, somewhat dry sense of humor that's very good and endearing. You know, and I'm looking forward to working with Mayor Jane Castor. You know, she's only been in for about maybe 5 months, a little over 5 months now, 5.5 months. And, you know, I look forward to seeing what she's going to do. She ran a lot on improving our neighborhoods and making sure that our neighborhoods get the attention that they deserve. And I'm sure that, you know, she's going to be acting out on those aspirations, because I know that's what's in her heart. I mean, if you take a look at the people that serve in her administration, her chief of staff is Chief John Bennett, who used to work with TPD and was the head of SWAT here in the city of Tampa for the police department. And he's a man who also knows our neighborhoods. So I think that these are good community partners that we can work with to improve our neighborhoods.
What can we do for our neighborhoods overall? Is there one thing that would help the neighborhoods more than anything else?
That's a good question. It depends. I mean, the needs of, for example, New Tampa are different from the needs of Copeland Park, and which are different from the needs of East Tampa, which is different from the needs of Hyde Park. I think that some of the big things that I see, we talked briefly about code enforcement. You know, this evening at the Forest Hills Rec Center, I'm going to be having a North Tampa meeting with John Bennett and others in the city of Tampa about code enforcement in the North Tampa area. Code enforcement, proper code enforcement, can make the difference between a neighborhood improving and on the downward turn, because we know that what folks, for example, who are criminals and who sell drugs, what they look at are neighborhoods that appear defeated, neighborhoods where you know, and code enforcement can help make that difference. And so that's an important issue.
I've had the county code enforcement on several times talking. Yes. Their hands are tied by the state. Yeah. I mean, they have these hearings and they're all de novo, or they start out, what you said last time doesn't count this time for those that aren't lawyers. And it just seems to make no sense what they have to go through in order to shut something down or get even grass cut.
Yep. I mean, they like to respect property rights, but there has to be, and obviously I think we all support that, but there's got to be a balance between the rights of the property holder, right, and the right of the neighborhood and the neighbors to not have their community go down because somebody refuses to take basic cursory care for their house. And so there's got to be a balance for that. You know, obviously we all want to see changes, but we work with the system that we have. You know, and the big thing is that neighborhoods feel that the city is listening to them. I hold a lot of...
That is important.
Oh, it's pivotal. I hold a lot of town halls. In my first 2.5 years, I think I did about 14 town halls throughout all my district. Some I do by myself, others I do with different people. I've done town halls with Ken Hagan, with Victor Chris, with now Fentress Driscoll, who's our new state representative, and other individuals I've done with town halls. Cindy Stewart with the school board, among others. Pat Kemp, Kim Overman, now with the county commission. And I do that so that people can feel that they're heard, and then that I'll listen and then act. You know what I mean? That's something that's very important, because a lot of times the folks feel that government is not accessible to them, and I like to change that perception.
I think feedback's important.
Oh yeah, sure.
Both from the public to you and you back to the public, which I think this program gives you an opportunity to do.
Exactly, and it's very important, and you're right. I mean, perfect example, in New Tampa, I got in the budget in fiscal year 2018 money for design for a sensory-friendly autism park in the Tampa Palms area, which would make it very well set there. After we got it, then we began talking to the neighborhood, and I found out that one neighborhood in Tampa Palms in particular kind of had some challenges with where that park was going to be set. Now, you'd think a park like this, people would celebrate,
sure,
and everybody supports the intent,
right,
but we were able to work with the neighborhood, and we're doing that now to try to mitigate some of those effects on something that everybody supports. So again, something that you think is a home run, somebody would go, no, that's just a double.
No, wait a minute.
Let's tell you how to get back to home.
Let's stop.
You know? Yeah.
What do you think is the number one issue for downtown Tampa in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we got to continue to keep the momentum going. You take a look at what's happening in Channelside with Mr. Vinnick's development out there. That's certainly something that's going to be on everybody's mind. I think transportation is the biggest issue. Something that I'm very excited about, particularly representing the USF areas, potentially having some sort of a transit connector, whether it's going to be rail, whether it's going to be bus rapid transit on 275 or somewhere else between the USF area, downtown Tampa, and then to West Shore. I think that that's something that's going to be really, really a big game changer, especially now you have the USF Medical School being downtown. So you have that, the link, I guess, the identity link. Now let's have the physical link. In terms of mass transit, I think that transportation is going to be very important, but we need to continue to have that optimism for downtown in terms of what's happened there. But again, balance that optimism with the need to invest in our neighborhoods. We've invested a lot in downtown. We're not going to leave that behind, but we need to have a balance between that and things like parks and recreation, code enforcement, affordable housing, and that's a big issue for downtown is affordable housing. We need to make sure that the kind of housing that we build in downtown is not just for lawyers. It's not just for people earning six figures, that it's for the people that work in downtown. We've got to be a city that is middle class and working class friendly and friendly to people of all different income thresholds, and that includes residential downtown.
Councilman Good and I were talking about that.
Yes.
And I was sharing with him a friend of mine living in Seattle now in that high-tech environment.
Yeah.
They've built what I call a beehive.
Yeah.
The rooms are no bigger than what we're sitting in here.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little longer, a little narrower.
Yeah. And
they give them a bus pass, they give them Wi-Fi, and the rents are controlled, they're very low. And it's really, we need that kind of thing because people making $7, $8 an hour can't afford $1,700 for a studio apartment. Oh, no.
I mean, it's, affordable housing continues to be one of the great crises here in the Hillsborough County, Tampa Bay area, in the city of Tampa. I know we're taking, in the mayor's budget this year, there were some partnerships that were made with other sister governments in order to improve that. I know Hillsborough County's also moved to having about a $10 million investment.
I've got to ask you to come back because we've just run out of time.
Oh, there you go.
Louis,
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So glad to have you on.
My pleasure.
You're welcome back anytime you want to come.
Thank you, sir.
I just found everything you had to say very interesting. I think there's a lot of areas that I'd like to expand on.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Bill Hodges. You've been watching Spotlight on Government. You're unique, you're special, and you're great. Tell yourself so often because you are, and we'll see you on the next Spotlight on Government.
Thank you.
And again, thank you, Councilman Rivera.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.